Welcome to Colorlight Designs. Fantastic journeys through art, word, and sound. This artwork and short story are called Your Time, Your Truth. Sylas Bellamy was no ordinary clockmaker, not that many people noticed. In the quiet town of Pennington, he was just that guy who fixes watches and the one who smells like cigars. Few knew about the jazz records spinning in his workshop or how he mumbled half-forgotten poetry while repairing gear trains. Fewer still had glimpsed the restless mind behind his wire-rimmed glasses, the one that asked, "What if time isn't just measured, but made?" It was that question, quiet and insistent, that had haunted him for years. And then, one night, it woke him up. The dream started like a riddle, a sundial bathed in twilight. A crow perched on its edge. The bird spoke in cryptic rhymes about time and choice, about seeing and becoming. When Sylas jolted awake, he felt an ache in his chest, an urgency that dragged him into his workshop before dawn. His hands began moving on their own, sketching loops and spirals, equations he didn't fully understand. For days he worked. By the time he finished, the dream had crystallized into something real. A pocket watch with an iridescent face and hands that didn't just tell time, they seemed to defy it. Inscribed on the back were the words that had whispered through his dreams. Your time, your truth. When Sylas tested the watch, he saw himself standing in a field of golden light, surrounded by jubilant faces. For the first time in years, he felt something stir in him. Hope. The watch and the barista. Word of the watch spread quickly. An artist saw herself painting murals in a distant city. A nurse glimpsed herself opening a free clinic. Each vision was different, but they all shared a magnetic pull. Soon, a line formed outside Sylas's workshop, customers clamoring for a chance to hold the magical timepiece. Sylas tried to remain detached, but the stories unsettled him. Some customers claimed the watch gave them courage. Others returned in frustration, saying the vision had become a torment they couldn't escape. The line grew shorter, but the burden of what he'd created grew heavier. And then, one rainy afternoon, Willow walked in. Willow wasn't like his other customers. She didn't come with wide eyes or trembling hands. She came in dripping wet and smirking, her wild curls plastered to her face. She looked like trouble and carried herself like a dare. "So, this is the famous watch wizard," she said, inspecting a wall of ticking clocks. "Do you also do tea leaves, or is it strictly tick-tocks?" Sylas raised an eyebrow. "You're here for the watch or the weather?" "Can't it be both?" She leaned on the counter, water pooling around her elbows. "People say you're selling futures. I figured I'd come see what mine's worth." Willow picked up the glowing watch, but the moment she did, her playful expression fell away. Her breath hitched, and her hand trembled. "What did you see?" Sylas asked softly. Willow set the watch down and crossed her arms. "Nothing that makes sense. Just me on a stage, holding something weird. Doesn't matter." "You're shaking," Sylas said. "I'm cold," she snapped. "Not scared." But her bravado didn't fool him. The connection. Willow started visiting the shop regularly, not for the watch, but for Sylas. At first, she came to argue. "This destiny thing is a scam," she'd say, pacing as Sylas tinkered with the watch. "You're just dangling dreams in front of people and hoping they chase them like cats and laser pointers." "And yet you keep coming back," Sylas replied, without looking up. "Well, yeah, it's fun to see you squirm." Over time, the arguments became conversations, and the conversations became something closer to friendship. Willow started bringing coffee and snacks from the cafe where she worked, perching on the counter while Sylas adjusted gears and springs. I don't get it, she said one day, watching him polish the watch. Why do you keep this thing? Doesn't it freak you out? Sylas hesitated. It's not the watch that matters. It's what people do with it, what they choose. Willow rolled her eyes. You sound like a fortune cookie. And you sound scared, Sylas shot back. Willow froze. Scared of what? She asked, her voice quieter than usual. That stage you saw, Sylas said, his gaze steady. Whatever you were holding, you saw something bigger than yourself, and now you're running from it. Willow laughed sharp, brittle. You don't know me. Don't I? Sylas asked. The breaking point. Their connection deepened, but the tension between them grew sharper. Willow started avoiding the watch, yet it haunted her. Sylas noticed the way her fingers brushed it absently, the way she flinched when its hum filled the room. Why don't you just smash it? She demanded. Sylas frowned. What are you talking about? The watch. This stupid thing. She pointed at it like it had insulted her personally. You said people have a choice, but this thing takes that away. You're playing God, Sylas. Sylas set down his tools and crossed his arms. And you're still hiding. Why are you so afraid to admit you saw something important? I don't need a glowing trinket to tell me who I am, Willow shouted. Then why are you still here? Sylas shot back. The room went silent except for the storm raging outside. Willow's jaw tightened when she grabbed the watch. Let me prove it doesn't matter, she said, holding it aloft. Let me! Willow, don't! Sylas lunged, but too late. The watch slipped from her fingers and hit the floor. Time seemed to slow. Sparks flew as the watch shattered, its hum dying in a low, mournful whine. Sylas and Willow stared at the broken pieces, the tension between them heavier than the storm. I guess that solves your problem, Willow said, her voice hollow. She turned and walked out, leaving Sylas alone with the ruins of his creation and their friendship. The invitation. Weeks passed. Sylas tried to repair the watch, but its glow never returned. The workshop grew quieter, lonelier. He hadn't realized how much Willow's presence had filled the space until it was gone. Then, one morning, an envelope arrived. Inside was an invitation to a charity gala in a rural field. No sender, no details, just a date and a location. Sylas almost didn't go, but something tugged at him, a faint echo of the vision he'd seen so long ago. Against his better judgment, he dusted off his suit and went. The field was bathed in golden light, just as he'd seen in the watch's vision. Laughter and music filled the air as people milled about, their faces radiant with joy. At the center of it all was Willow, standing on a makeshift stage. She looked radiant, confident in a way Sylas had never seen before. She held the crowd effortlessly, weaving a story about courage, fear, and the choices that shape us. When her speech ended, the crowd erupted in applause. Willow spotted Sylas lingering at the edge of the gathering and made her way over, a sly smile tugging at her lips. You came, she said. You invited me, Sylas replied. She handed him a glass of champagne. It wasn't the watch that scared me, she said after a moment. It was the idea that maybe I could be someone bigger, that maybe I'd fail. And now? Sylas asked. Willow grinned. Turns out failing is part of the fun. The new clock. Back in his workshop, Sylas found himself inspired again. This time, he didn't aim to predict futures or reveal destinies. Instead, he created something simple yet profound. A clock whose hands moved only when the bearer did something meaningful. Weeks later, Willow visited the shop, now filled with the hum of new projects. She placed a jazz record on the counter and smirked. "Figured you could use a new soundtrack," she said. Sylas held up the clock. "What's this one do? Show you the meaning of life?" He chuckled. "Nope, just ticks when you're living it." As Willow laughed, the faint hum of gears filled the room, not from a clock, but from the rhythm of lives in motion. The end. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please be sure to like and subscribe, and stop by colorlightdesigns.com and grab your free digital print of the Your Time, Your Truth illustration.